Welcome to Chemistry with Mrs. Mays. Today we're going to talk about what is chemistry. Seems important to know if you're going to study it. The study of chemistry is simply the study of matter and all the different changes that matter can undergo. The type of matter that is changing and the types of changes that it could go through is what determines the type of chemistry that is being studied. There are several branches of chemistry that you should be familiar with. The first one is called physical chemistry because it's the study of not just the matter, but also the physics behind its changes, like whether it releases heat or absorbs heat. In biochemistry, it's the combination of biology with chemistry, so it's the study of the makeup of changes that are undergone by living species. Because remember, bio means life. Analytical chemistry is where we study what a substance is made of. We call this the composition of a substance. And that's done by analyzing the components in the chemicals. So it's called analytical chemistry. Organic chemistry is the study of compounds which primarily contain the element carbon. Carbon is such a flexible atom that can bond in so many different ways with so many different things that it gets its own entire branch of chemistry. And then anything else that's not involving carbon is referred to as inorganic chemistry. So you could have physical organic chemistry or physical inorganic chemistry, depending on whether there is carbon or not carbon in the compounds that you're studying. Now, when we say the changes of matter, there's a couple different kinds. There are two kinds of changes. One kind is a chemical change. Chemical change involves a change in color, the evolution of a gas, the formation of a precipitate, which is where a solid substance sinks down to the bottom of your container, or a change in energy, often in the form of heat, and sometimes even as light. Finally, some chemical changes involve a pH change if you're dealing with acids or bases. Those are some indications that a chemical change has taken place. So chemical properties describe how a substance reacts with other substances. It describes how it might change in a chemical way. Examples include corrosive. That means it would erode a metal like acid or oxygen or water can cause a metal to rust. Inert is referring to when a chemical does not react. Flammable and combustible are not the same, but flammable and inflammable mean the same thing, which is a strange quirk of the English language. It both means that they can catch on fire. So if a substance is labeled as flammable or if it's labeled as inflammable, both of those words mean it could possibly catch on fire, so don't stick it next to the Bunsen burner. Combustible means that it could explode. Combustible isn't quite the same as flammable, but of course we think of them as almost the same. Really, they're not. Combustible means it could explode. Caustic means that it can cause burns, like an acid can burn your skin, and a strong base can also burn your skin. Well, now come the really scary words. Mutagen causes changes in your DNA, and a carcinogen causes cancer, whereas a teratogen is the kind of chemical that can cause birth defects in your offspring. Those are some pretty scary types of chemical properties. We're not going to work in our chemistry lab with anything that's a known mutagen, carcinogen, or teratogen. But we'll handle all of our chemicals safely just in case. In addition to having chemical properties that describe how it reacts, there's also physical properties that just describe what it is like, what the substance is like. So chemical properties describe what it does when it reacts. But physical properties describe what it is. That means you're describing a quality or a condition of a substance that can be observed or measured without changing the composition of the substance at all. In other words, it retains its identity throughout the physical change or the physical properties describing what it's like when it's just that thing and not when it's reacting with other things. Some examples of this include two different categories. One category is called an intrinsic property. Intrinsic properties are going to stay the same no matter how much of the substance is present, like the color of something, odor, its solubility, hardness, density. Melting point is often used to identify that you actually have the thing that you think you have. It can be that precise. So if you have a solid substance, particularly an organic substance, melting point is often used to verify that you really have the chemical that you think it is. Boiling point would describe at what temperature that liquid turns into a gas. And then the state of matter. There are only two liquid elements on the entire periodic table. The state of matter can help us identify what kind of element it is we're dealing with. Extrinsic properties, on the other hand, must necessarily change when there's more of that stuff. For example, if you have more stuff, then the mass increases because mass measures how much stuff we have. Usually when the mass increases, the volume also increases because now it's going to take up more space. Well, that doesn't always happen. We can pack things in a little more tightly and more compactly, but that would then change its density, and density is one of those intrinsic properties. Finally, there's the appearance of something and the shape of something. But you know, sometimes if you have more stuff, then its shape is not going to be the same as when you have less. Sometimes that's true. Shape doesn't indicate exactly what kind of stuff it is. We can make things into all kinds of different shapes. But the appearance might surprise you. Just think of it this way. If you have a drop of water, it's going to look different than if you have an entire cup full of water or a river full of water, and definitely if you have a whole ocean full of water. It's all water, but its appearance can change because sometimes, of course, there's other stuff mixed in with it, but sometimes just having more of it changes the way it looks to us. For example, if I have gold on a streak plate, the gold streak is going to have a black appearance. But if I look at gold as a big lump of metal, then it's gold colored and really shiny. But the streak that it leaves behind on a streak plate is black. You might also know that iron on a streak plate is red. Iron doesn't look red, it looks sort of dark gray and a little bit dull, not super shiny. But on a streak plate, it leaves a red mark behind because when you have a smaller quantity of it, its appearance is different. But its color isn't going to be different if we measure the exact wavelengths of light that those atoms produce when we add energy to them. So the color could be an intrinsic property if we're talking about like specific wavelengths and atomic fingerprints called the emission spectrum. But if we're talking about the color of like how it appears to be, then that is going to be an extrinsic physical property, because that sometimes depends on how much stuff you have. So now you know a little bit about what chemistry is and what kinds of things chemistry studies. We're going to spend the entire year looking at chemical and physical properties and also investigating chemical and physical changes. Thanks for joining with me. Can't wait to see you in class.